Welcome to the BlackTrack, where I do commentary and review on movies with an all-black cast, or at least a black lead. During Black History Month, I talked about a movie called Sugar Hill, a 1970s Blaxploitation horror film about a woman named Sugar Hill who goes on a murderous revenge tour against the men who killed her fiancé. Today's movie shares the same name, but instead of a person, this Sugar Hill is about a place and has no relation to that other movie. 1994 Sugar Hill was written by the same man who wrote both New Jack City and Above the Rim. Collectively, the three movies are known as the Harlem Trilogy, and Sugar Hill is the middle child of the three, but only by 1 month, as it was released only 30 days before Above the Rim. I bet at the time, nobody even noticed it was written by the same man. Being the middle child of a movie trilogy is probably about the same as being an actual middle child, because Sugar Hill is the least recognized and less talked about of all three movies. There's probably many reasons for that, but to me, I think it's because it's kind of presented as the anti-New Jack City, for better or for worse. It shares many similarities with that film, like locations, a drug theme, and both starring Wesley Snipes. But Sugar Hill is about getting out of the game rather than trying to rise within it. Wesley Snipes was busy during this time period, and it was said that he wanted to do something a little more dramatic after starring in 4 back-to-back action films. I've mentioned before how Wesley Snipes is the rare triple threat actor, so he probably could have carried this movie on his own. Luckily, he didn't have to, because Sugar Hill also features Michael Wright of 5 Heartbeats fame, Teresa Randall, Ernie Hudson, and Clarence Williams III. Sugar Hill is a much slower film than its other Harlem cousins, but does that mean that it's a worse film because of it? Let's BlackTrack and find out. Sugar Hill's opening credits gives me Love Jones vibes, but this movie predates Love Jones, so I guess those Love Jones vibes were actually Sugar Hill vibes all along. It shows a series of photos of Harlem in chronological order, but what really sets the mood is the jazz music that plays over it. The entire movie has a great jazz score, which combined with the sepia tone color scheme gives the movie a black film noir feel, which I think is what they were going for. But as we all know, if you really want to portray something that's old, you don't do sepia, you do black and white. We get a flashback with Candy Alexander getting a head start on playing a junkie like she did on that HBO miniseries The Corner. You know you deep into addiction when you don't even bother to put clothes on in front of your kids. And you make them take turns tying you off.
Why do I always have to do it? Why don't you never ask Romello? Because you're the oldest, sweetheart.
Oh, I'm sorry, never mind, she has a favorite. This happy family is the Scuggs family. Mother Ella, younger brother Romello, and older brother Rainathan. This would have been a perfect opportunity for one of those I bet you wondering how I ended up in this situation type flashbacks. But I'm glad Sugar Hill spreads his flashbacks out, only giving them to you when they feel it's important. This opening scene with Ella overdosing is important for establishing the difference in this movie and other drug movies, because Sugar Hill is more about how drugs affect families and relationships rather than how much money and fame it brings to the dealers. We never even hear how much money anybody makes in the movie. Grown-up Romello is played by Wesley Snipes, and together with grown-up Rainathan, played by Michael Wright, they run their section of the town, some would say right into the ground. Look at him, watching over the town like he's Batman or something. You know what this town needs? Junkies. It doesn't help that the scene is filled with Gothic architecture, something that was also done on purpose to give the film a more distinct look, other than the graffiti-filled scenery that 90s New York cinema was known for. Can you even really call yourself a 90s drug dealer if you don't own a nightclub? From the very beginning, it doesn't really feel like Romello even wants to be a drug dealer. He looks miserable. Don't know if the term reluctant drug dealer is a thing, but this picture should be the first thing that comes up when you search for it. The movie makes it seem as if he had no idea he was going to get out of the game until he laid eyes on Melissa, played by Teresa Randall, who as usual is right on time. Teresa Randall did this movie during what might be the height of her career, and after the 90s, I thought she was gonna blow up. But after 1997, her career slowed down dramatically for some reason. Until she does an interview or something, I guess we'll never know why. Ironically, she's an aspiring actress in Sugar Hill, and seemingly unimpressed with Romello during their first encounter.
Be careful.
Of what? People like you?
I'm just here to help.
I said thank you.
Their whole relationship is weird, and a weak catalyst for Romello wanting to get out of the drug game. Mostly because we go straight from this to a scene of them being deep in a relationship about 20 minutes later with nothing in between. but we'll get to that in a minute. I can't stress enough how much I like these flashbacks, slowly telling the story piece by piece about why the Scuggs brothers got into the drug game. You would think that they didn't have a father figure, and honestly, it probably would have been better if they didn't, because their dad was a drug dealer himself who ended up addicted to his own stuff and nearly shot to death by his boss's cousin. Hey, all of this probably could have been avoided, but it would be a while before Biggie's 10 Crack Commandments came out, so he didn't know any better. A.R. Scruggs is played by the great Clarence Williams III, and he acts complete circles around everybody in this movie. It's not even close. This is way off topic, but remember in the movie Wayne's World 2, when Wayne goes to the gas station to ask for directions, and the first old guy they have there just isn't working for the scene, so they replace him with a better actor, and it ends up being Charlton Heston of all people, who then does the most extra overacting ever for a silly comedy. I like to imagine that they originally picked somebody else for the role of A.R. Scuggs, who simply wasn't working out, so they replaced him with Clarence Williams III and told him, hey, we just need somebody to play a drug dealing father, nothing too serious, and instead they ended up with,
it's not your fault. You can't fix it. I just want you to be proud of me.
Hey, it makes sense to me. This all leads to the real reason that Romello became a drug dealer. He gets revenge for his father's embarrassment, I guess, because he survived the shooting. This is more than an eye for an eye, it's more like an eye for a head, because young Romello kills the cousin of his father's boss, and somehow Sal, AR's old boss, is impressed enough by it to front young Romy some work. Hey, isn't that the token black guy from She's All That? It's heavily insinuated that AR actually is dead on the inside, so maybe that counts as dead in Romello's eyes. So you know that old movie trope where they introduce a character that really has no bearing on the story, and they're just way too positive, whether it be that they're going to college or maybe about to have a baby or something sweet like that. You just know something bad is going to happen to them, and you just wish that the movie didn't make it so obvious. In Sugar Hill, it's this kid named Kami, played by Donald Faison. He's a kid who Romello wishes didn't look up to him because he has a good family with money and a nice house, so there's no need for him to fake it and ride around with guns. But I'm sure nothing's gonna happen to him later on to come back to bite him in the ass, right? Hey look, it's Ernie Hudson in a New York movie. Who you gonna call? Not the Ghostbusters. In this case, probably the Dope Man, because he's a rival drug dealer named Lolly, and in a rare case, somewhat the primary antagonist. I say somewhat because his character development is kinda weak, and for a movie that's unnecessarily 2 hours long, I thought it would tell us more about him, other than the fact that he was a former boxer turned drug lord. We get way more character development between Melissa and her mother Dora, played by Leslie Uggams, who you might remember as the favorite adopted daughter Netta from the movie Black Girl. More modern audiences may not recognize her, but she's also the character Blind Al in the Marvel Deadpool movies. She can't stand Melissa's life choices, but that's just about her wanting to be an actress. Wait until she finds out that she's been gallivanting around town with the DC Dark Knight. It doesn't take long for Melissa to realize that she done fell in love with the wrong man once Romello gets a call that his best friend Ricky Goggles has been beaten and burned alive while trying to infiltrate Lolly's crew. I love that the movie is self-aware enough to play into the fact that Romello and Melissa barely know each other.
You don't belong here. I told you to drive the fucking car home.
I can't drive!
I think one of Sugar Hill's biggest flaws, believe it or not, is that it spends too much time on the drug triangle between the Scuggs brothers, Lolly's crew, and Sal's crew. And even though technically this is a drug movie, none of that stuff is nearly as interesting as Romello's redemption story. It all feels like padding, like this long and drawn out scene between Romello and Sal, where Sal basically expresses that he's too old for all of this. It feels like Romello is like a son to him. Then there's this scene where Romello intimidates Lolly by showing him that he has eyes everywhere, even in Lolly's own gym, which is ludicrous. You trying to convince me that as paranoid as drug dealers are, this man wouldn't know the people in his own gym? That's damn near everybody there. Your security sucks, Ernie. However, I do like all these on the roof scenes with Romello and Rainathan discussing their different viewpoints in life. Romello wants out of the game, of course, and wants to leave Harlem behind, but Rainathan wants to stay and continue rising to the top. The Harlem Trilogy really loves its rooftop scenes, and I think which ones are better really comes down to your personal preference. Before Romello can do any of that though, he has to convince Melissa to believe that he's truly done. This scene uses another technique that I really like and that I mentioned in my video for Paid in Full, where two characters are on two different sides of the fence, showing that they have two different lifestyles. I don't know why the separation works, but it just does. I bet half of you don't even recognize this building. I know I didn't at first, but it's actually the real life Graham Court, aka the Carter from New Jack City, just close up on the front gate. It's a cool little nod to the writer's previous movie, and the director said that he intentionally wanted to use the same building, but to frame it in a way to make it look more upscale for this film. It definitely fooled me. I'll tell you who's not a fool, and that's Rainathan. He wants nothing to do with his father's sudden religious rebirth, and despite Romello trying to bring them back together, Ray can't shake the hurt feelings he has for his father's role in getting their mother hooked on drugs. These are the best parts of the movie, and there needed to be more of it.
Gave you the right to decide.
Me!
Oh, you. Yeah.
You know when I decided, huh? When he put our motherfucking lives on the line. When he made our moms a goddamn junkie. You think you know what it's like. No, but you knew! You knew, Pop!
It's a little hard to watch, but it's only because the performances are so emotionally raw. These are the kind of performances that should have been considered for awards, but were consistently ignored back then. At this point, Ray starts coming across like the devil on Romello's shoulder. Romello's mind is telling him what needs to be done with all this stuff, but his brother keeps making decisions that further drags his body back into this nonsense. As revenge for the murder of Ricky Goggles, Ray kidnaps and beats one of Lolly's men, forcing Romello to kill him so that he doesn't go back to tail. They're still blamed for the murder anyway, and an attempt is made on Romello's life, just as Kami is pulling up on the block. He pulls out his gun to try to protect Romello, and in a weird twist, he kinda does, since the gunman mistakes him for one of Romello's guys and shoots him instead.
Hang in a minute, it ain't that bad.
How I doing? That's real.
You all right?
How I doing?
You all right, brother?
Yeah, sure, right. Why lie right to the kid's face when he's on his way out, Mello? Even worse than all that, it was date night. And when Melissa hears about what happened, she realizes that things will never be normal for their relationship and decides to go out with someone else that night. Dr. Hugo, in fact, old Vondi Curtis Hall, here playing an athlete named Mark. Now, I had a whole bunch of stuff lined up to say about these next couple of scenes, but then decided that there was just no way that I could even talk about the kind of treatment that Melissa receives from this guy. It's some horrific abuse and an unnecessary series of events that really wasn't worth showing or talking about. It only really served to kind of prove that Melissa needed the kind of protection that Romello can bring to her life, which is kind of problematic, to be honest. I wish her character arc didn't involve getting literally beat down with no real redemption. Now, it can be argued that really nobody in this movie is a winner, and that's very true. And nothing drives that point home more than the scene between Ray and his father AR, where AR tries to explain his circumstances to him. This is one of the best monologues I have ever seen and heard. Rainathan doesn't say a thing, and the camera slowly zooms in on Clarence Williams while he goes through the motions of injecting heroin into his system and delivering an emotional speech that just has to be heard at the same time.
He went on and on about hell and damnation, Judgment Day, salvation.
It's powerful stuff that's bookended by AR overdosing and dying in Rainathan's face, just like his mother did all those years ago. It's revealed that Rainathan overdosed AR on purpose to, quote, put him out of his misery. But I like the fact that the movie leaves it up in the air whether AR was actually clean before this point or not. Rainathan then goes across the street and kills Lolly, all of his men, and Sal, believing that he and Mello will never be happy with them around. Only problem is, Romello was already pretty happy, until he discovered his father overdosed on the floor and confronts his brother outside with a gun. Ray confesses to killing everybody, which leads to a conflicted emotional moment where Romello realizes that the only reason that Ray doesn't want him to leave is because he feels like he'll be alone with his brother gone, and it's all he has. Rainathan then sees Melissa in the background and tries to shoot her, which prompts Romello to wrestle the gun from him, causing it to accidentally go off and shoot him. Rainathan, realizing what he's done, then shoots and kills himself as Melissa cries in the street to tragic jazz music. Now, you all know me. The movie should have ended right here. It's perfect for a depressing type movie like this, but I can see it now. Test audiences probably hated it, so of course Sugar Hill tacks on a somewhat happy ending, where Romello lives and he and Melissa move somewhere in the deep country to raise a son together. It's revealed that Romello is paralyzed and in a wheelchair, so it kinda feels like a compromise. But wait a second, you know, I've always wondered how people who are wheelchair bound make babies. You know what? Let me leave that alone. Those people be in the Special Olympics and everything, they're more than capable. Let's get to the grade. Sugar Hill kind of makes me mad at what it could have been. There's a deeply emotional story here, buried beneath all of the run-of-the-mill drug game stuff that becomes derivative after you've seen it a million times. Very rarely does the outcome of such endeavors change from movie to movie, but Sugar Hill had a real chance to more highlight the lows associated with the normal lives of these type of people. The problems with it stand out more when you have these great scenes with Clarence Williams, Wesley Snipes, and Michael Wright together, and then they transition to other scenes that feel like filler that don't really push the story further or make you feel anything. I kind of get what they were going for. The slow and dragging scenes and dialogue I'm sure were meant to invoke stage drama or film noir vibes, but I think it could have been done in a different, much shorter way. The atmosphere is top notch though. Everything from the music, the color tones, the architecture, and how it all contrasts the old with the new is on point. It just sucks that such a progressive art direction is somewhat wasted on an average film. If anything, it makes you appreciate New Jack City a little more. That movie was truly groundbreaking in the way it presented the drug game, even if it did glorify the dealers a little too much. It just goes to show it's a little harder than people might think to show the other side of the game and make it just as interesting. My grade for Sugar Hill is a C. It's easily my least favorite of the Harlem Trilogy, but with a few changes, it could have been the best. And that's it for another episode of the BlackTrack. As usual, let me know what you thought about the movie Sugar Hill in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about my channel. Hey, I'm almost over 1,000 subs, so don't forget that. So until next time, I'll holler at you.